On today's show, I'm looking at the worst case scenario for the Rangers in 2024, and where I think, even if everything goes wrong for this Rangers squad, this is still a very, very good team. We'll talk about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 10 seasons, including all 5 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Maybe in the comments today, instead of nearly any single thing below, you can comment "Happy Birthday, Bryce," because today, as you were listening to this, is my 30th birthday. I recorded this last night, so I wouldn't have to work on my birthday, and I won't be recording a show on Thursday, the actual day of. We'll get back on Friday morning, unless Jordan Montgomery decides to give me a very happy birthday present and sign with the Texas Rangers. But today, we are not looking at happy things. We are not looking at joyful things. We are looking at the worst of the worst. The sky is falling, Chicken Little. Everything goes wrong for the Rangers. What on green earth is the worst case scenario for your 2024 Texas Rangers? Now, a year ago, there were a lot of possibilities for the Rangers heading into the season. There were a lot of different places where people were projecting them to finish. They could be projected as high as third. They could go as low as fourth. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of hope for the Rangers in 2023. A lot of things had to go right for them to get to where they got to. A lot of things did go right. A lot of things went wrong. And the Rangers ended up with their first ever World Series championship. So I don't want you to get too bummed out and too low thinking, well, what if everything does go wrong for the Rangers in 2024? If everything, and I mean everything goes wrong, then we'll still get to go at the end of the season and say, oh, look, there's that Corey Seager home run in Game 1 of the World Series last year. Oh, there's the Eovaldi walk-off home run. Oh, there's the Josh Sborz glove spike. Oh, well, this season was a bummer, but last season the Rangers won the World Series. So it kind of cushions the blow. But for these players, for this front office, for this coaching staff, for everyone directly employed by the team, their mentality is not the same as most of ours, or at least mine has been this offseason of, wow, last season was fun, and who cares what happens moving forward? Because this team went to work in the offseason, and with very limited resources, very limited ability to go spend big like they had in seasons past, and really not a whole lot of acquisitions, not a whole lot of trades and creative moving things around. This team headed into 2024 with a really good squad. Now, there are still some big questions about this team that are surrounding this team, even as I am recording this, as we go into the season, that will probably persist throughout the regular season, including having top-end starting pitching that you can rely on being healthy and consistent. That there's definitely some questions there, and there are some things that the Rangers just have to avoid if they do not want to have a disaster scenario of a season. Now, I'm going with what is the likely worst case scenario. There's obviously, a bottom, first percentile, 0th percentile outcome of just everybody on the team just decides to uniformly give up playing baseball, or they get, monstered their talents away, or Ray Davis decides, we're going to fold the franchise. Major League Baseball is going to cease to exist. That's not it's technically a possibility, but not a likelihood. So we're going to go with about 5th or 10th percentile of worst level outcomes. There is a possibility of things going, 2014 Rangers, that was a team that was built to be exceptional, and then literally everybody and their dogs got hurt, and everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong that season. But you couldn't have headed into the 2014 season saying, oh, yep, this is a likely scenario that could happen of the worst case. No, that was not expected. And I don't think that level of catastrophe is on the table for the Rangers, even though some places are projecting the Rangers to go as bad as 81.5 wins. Fangraphs. Sorry, I was coughing and saying Fangraphs. But those disaster scenarios still do exist, and they are possible. some you might even worry if you were, still very anxious about Rangers baseball because of all the 56, however many years it had been of this franchise torturing you. If that championship didn't fade all that way, here are the things that you got to be worried about for the season getting way off the rails. The number one thing the Rangers have to avoid a worst case scenario is a Nathan Eovaldi injury in the first half. That is worst case scenario for the Rangers. Obviously, this season is all about those three pitchers, those three big, very good pitchers on the IL for the start of the season that will be gone for until June or July or August, or who kind of knows at this point, but those are the tentative dates for Scherzer and Mahle and DeGrom, respectively. So until then, Nate Eovaldi, big dog Nate, big game Nate, has got to hold down the fort in that first half. The Rangers have a lot of very talented teams they're playing against early on in the season. It's really annoying that the Rangers had all their games against the Astros last season right when they happened to be at their lowest point in the season. Didn't get to take advantage when the Rangers were doing very well in the first half of the season and the Astros were not. This year, the Rangers are playing the Astros a whole lot from the get-go, and, I'm sure the Rangers would rather have it the opposite way this year and wait until hopefully their pitching reinforcements are back, but that's not the way the cookie crumbles this year. So Nate Eovaldi has got to stay healthy for the first half of the season. I've said it a bunch of times. If he follows the game plan of last year, not that I am wishing for him to have an injury. I'm very much hoping that nobody gets injured. Everyone's great. Everything is marvelous. But he is on the older side for a pitcher. He's in his mid-30s now. He's 34. That's mid-30s now. He has had a lot of injury issues in the past, and he had that injury that started at the very beginning after the All-Star break and came back exactly when he needed to. And I don't think there's any question about if Nate Eovaldi is in the playoffs, he's going to be an absolute ace, an absolute hoss, an absolute number one starter that can will you to a World Series. Well, we've seen that multiple times now in his career. But if he can't stay healthy in the first half, or really if there's any question about these starting pitchers, it's mainly Nathan Eovaldi because he's the clear front runner number one. I think John Gray is going to have a really solid season. He's important to this Rangers team, but he has been fairly durable for most of his career. It hasn't been a whole lot of elbow and shoulder injuries like it had been with Nate Eovaldi. Heaney, there's some question marks about his long-term durability, but he was healthy for like the entirety of last year, which was kind of surprising given of all of the guys heading into the year. I was most concerned about Andrew Heaney's ability to stay healthy for the full year. I was more concerned about him staying healthy than Jacob deGrom. No offense to Andrew Heaney, but I would have rather Andrew Heaney been the one to get 6 starts for the Rangers and Jacob deGrom be the one to pitch the full season. But I digress. That's not where the Rangers are. But that is the number one concern. Do not have a Nate Eovaldi injury in the first half. Let him stay durable. Let him be that workhorse that we know he can be for stretches. And then you can ease the burden off as you head down the stretch when you get more of those starting pitchers in your rotation. You could go to more of a 6-man rotation down the stretch like I think they will. But that's not the only thing that the Rangers are concerned about in a disaster scenario. The next thing I think is the most important is that Max Scherzer comes back on time and is healthy for the vast majority of this season. There are definitely some question marks there with Scherzer. He's coming off of a back surgery at his age 39 season. He's had a couple of different injuries that have piled up the last couple of years. He's projected for 111 innings by Fangraphs, which I think is generous, and I'd take it. Honestly, if right now I knew that it's about 111 innings that the Rangers are going to get from Max Scherzer, I think that's fine. The Rangers aren't expecting Max Scherzer to be, the Cy Young version of himself, but they really need him. He's going to be the first one back, and I think he is the one you can bank on being the most like the latest iteration of the version we've seen of him, which was regular season down the stretch with the Rangers. Max Scherzer, that was a very good pitcher. He was probably a number 2 starter, not Cy Young caliber, but still very, very good. And still, without those starts from Scherzer down the stretch, the Rangers don't even make the postseason. He really helped the Rangers in that horrible stretch in August, and even in early September when things were still not back on the rails, he helped them get back there. with that winning streak in Toronto, where he got injured, and then did come back and gave the Rangers everything he had in the ALCS and the World Series. They really need DeGrom, hopefully, to be just ready for the playoffs. Because, I mean, it feels like at this point, anything you get for DeGrom in the regular season is a win. The Rangers are hoping to get him back in August, whether it's early August, late August, mid-August, who knows at this point. But just get that man fully healthy for the playoffs. Let him start game one of a playoff series, whether you're a wild card team, whether you're a 100-win juggernaut. You start Jacob DeGrom game one of any playoff series, you're feeling really darn good, which it's still so insane that the Rangers were able to win that World Series without the guy who, when healthy, is the best pitcher in baseball. Coming up, we're going to look at some other scenarios that the Rangers have to avoid a worst-case season, and why a lot has to go wrong for this team to be straight-up bad. Right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Fire TV. Fire TV is your destination for sports. From live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs as well as the Fire TV stick you can plug directly into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, college basketball tournament, you are going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands all for free. That includes us over at Locked On, and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date in the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, and cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't already, you've got to trust me on this. To learn more, visit amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it is time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. You can pick on all kinds of different, NCAA like tournament stuff. You can also bet on MLB if you wanted to bet on Corey Seager winning his first ever AL MVP, or if you wanted to bet on Simeon or whoever you're looking at, whether it's the over-unders on the Rangers and more. Go check it out at FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops till they cut down those nets. Shout out to the everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, like I said, I'll be back and talking about the best case scenario for your 2024 Texas Rangers. Now, we've been talking about what would lead to the worst case scenario, but I want to talk about what would keep the bottom from falling out on this team. Why this team's floor is so darn high. And I think the main reason for that is the thing that we know is going to be good about this team. The thing beyond a shadow of a doubt that is going to be very good to elite to unstoppable, and at worst, very good about this team. That's the offense. I don't see a single scenario. I don't see any likely plausible scenarios where the Rangers do not have a top 10 offense in baseball at minimum next year. At minimum. I think this is going to be around a number 2 or 3 offense. It's definitely going to be a top 5 offense when you look at it going into next year because of not only the pieces that they already have heading into the season, like, the guy who finished second in MVP voting in Corey Seager. Oh, and they also got the guy who finished third in Marcus Semien. Oh, and they've got Adolis Garcia, who's been a average of 3.8 WAR player for the last 3 years of his career when he's been an everyday player. Or, they've also got pick your all-star. They got 5 all-star hitters on this team from last year. That's just from last year. Plus, that's Nathaniel Lowe coming off of a really, really down season. You have Josh Young, regressing really badly in the back half of the year when he came back from that thumb injury. You have another full season of Leo Tavares. Oh, Mitch Garver's gone. That's not great, but hey, who are you replacing with? Is your everyday? Oh, it's your everyday DH or most day DH? Oh, it's going to be Wyatt Langford. The guy who hit his 6th home run of spring training on Wednesday and just looks like an absolute juggernaut of a star. And also, your everyday left fielder, instead of a combination of Robbie Grossman and Travis Jankowski, which it was for most of last season, no hate to either of those guys, it is going to be Evan Carter, who is really darn good and still very young and still possibly getting better. Maybe not better than the 1058 OPS that he was rocking in the regular season last year, but still a very good player. So a massive upgrade in left field, maybe even an upgrade at DH. I think you're definitely going to get more than 344 plate appearances out of Wyatt Langford this year, which is what the Rangers got out of Mitch Garver last year. But, say they have, regression from, multiple All-Stars, say 2 All-Stars, maybe even 3 All-Stars. Say Jonah Heim regresses a bit offensively. Say, Josh Young takes a step back, which I don't think is likely because it's his sophomore year. I don't think he's going to be worse. Or say Adolis Garcia also takes a step back. Well, okay, then you've got, if Nathaniel Lowe, goes back to the mean of what we think he is as an offensive player, if Wyatt Langford is about what we think he is, and if Evan Carter is about what we think he is, and Leo Taveras does about what he did last year, and he's still young and still has plenty of room to improve and get more consistent, that's still an incredibly good offense. And that is 3 players, say Jonah Heim, Josh Young, and Adolis Garcia all take steps back next year. That's still a very darn good offense. Even if Corey Seager takes just a little bit of a step back of, he's not, an 1,000 OPS player, he's just like a 900 OPS player, still an incredibly deep and talented roster and deep and talented offense. And you have to squint and, turn your head and say, oh, well, what if this and what if that? And, what if Evan Carter struggles as a rookie? What if, Wyatt Langford's merely just a pretty good rookie as opposed to an unstoppable juggernaut at the plate? Okay, then those guys will go down 7th, 8th in this lineup, and there'll still be, 5 more All-Stars ahead of them. You'll still have Corey Seager, who's incredible. You'll still have Adolis Garcia, who has been incredible. Josh Young, Jonah Heim, Nathaniel Lowe. This is still such a darn good offense. I just cannot see a scenario where it is even mid. There is just too much talent on this roster, too much talent in this hitting coaching staff for this offense to be anything but exceptional. No matter who is having a down year or a bad year or how many people regress, there is just too much talent here for this not to be an exceptional squad. And you also want to look at last year. I mean, all these bad case scenarios of suffering. I don't know. Say you're multi-time Cy Young winner. Say you only get 6 starts out of him. Say you have a MVP level shortstop and he misses like 40 games. Say, you have 3 different other All-Stars from August on, or say, 4 All-Stars from, the end of July on, miss significant time. And what happens to that team? Well, that's what happened to this team last year. They had 4 different guys, 4 different all-star hitters from the middle of July on, suffer significant injuries. And all this team did was stay incredibly consistent. They had a winning record in every month last year, outside of, October. They had a winning record in October, not in the regular season, but every month outside of July, where they went 11-13. Winning record every other month. This team had all these different setbacks, all these different, pitfalls, all these different things go terribly wrong for them last year, and they still ended up a 90-win team, which, if you look at their Pythagorean record, their expected wins and loss record based on how much they scored and how much they let up, this is a 96-win team. And all these projections that are projecting them for 86 wins or 85 or 82 or 82 wins feels just downright despicable. I don't see how you look at this team and where they were last year and say, yeah, this is 15 wins worse than last year. How? Do you think the combination of Aroldis Chapman, Mitch Garver, Martin Perez, Will Smith, Chris Stratton, and Jordan Montgomery, that's 15 wins out the door? I don't see a scenario where that is the case. The floor on this team is incredibly high. And coming up, we're going to look at what that floor even is and what it would take for these Rangers to miss out on the playoffs. right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks even offers injury insurance so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return to the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays live. PrizePicks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. PrizePicks now offers Apple Pay for quick, easy deposits into your account this basketball season. So, go check out the #1 fantasy sports app. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Shout out to the Everydayers for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. We'll be back on Monday. Next week, starting full season previews, looking at big questions, bold predictions, all kinds of different stuff next week. Next week, we are a week away from opening day. Rejoice, my friends. We have almost made it through this incredibly short offseason because the Texas Rangers won the freaking World Series. And they might just do it again this year. But we're not talking about that. We are talking about the worst case scenario, the doom and gloom, the pessimism. That all of you pessimists, you are here. This is your episode. This is for you. Now, what is the worst case scenario for these Rangers? Well, honestly, I think the floor for this team is 82 wins. I really do. And it's not because I think that, this team is, there's no way this team is the playoff spot. There's no way this team, has major regression. There's no way this team has some kind of World Series hangover. I think those are all possibilities. But I mean, you look at some of the teams that Bruce Bochy had after he won the World Series. He never went back to back. It was just even year nonsense, which, he finally did it in an odd year. Maybe the even year stuff will power the Rangers to have some, good injury luck in 2024. I don't know. Maybe that was just reliant. Maybe that was just, relevant to the Giants was the even year stuff. Maybe the Rangers, it's odd year stuff. But still, I think that there are definitely scenarios where this team misses out on the playoffs, and I just don't see any scenario barring everyone gives up on baseball. That's just not a likely scenario for me that I see this team finishing with a sub 500 record. I think there's plenty of scenarios where they miss out on the playoffs. I think my projection is probably going to be somewhere around, 86 to 88 wins. And maybe there's definitely a higher upside. We'll talk about that on tomorrow's show, how good this team can be. But I don't think there's as much variance as a lot of these different projection systems are saying for the Rangers. I mean, yeah, who knows what the Rangers are going to get when 39-year-old Max Scherzer comes back. I feel pretty confident in betting on the guy with, 3 Cy Young Awards or 2 Cy Young Awards. Maybe it's 3. Several Cy Young Awards and a surefire Hall of Fame candidacy at over 3,000 innings and over 3,000 strikeouts. I feel pretty confident in saying he's going to be pretty darn good when he comes back. I don't know what the Rangers are getting in Tyler Mahle, what he'll look like in year 1 off of Tommy John surgery. But I know that there's not a whole lot being banked on that because they also have another guy coming down the pipe in Jacob deGrom in some point in August, or maybe it's September, or maybe it's October. But I know that when Jacob deGrom has been on the hill for the last 5, 6, 7 years, he's been unbelievably good. And I mean, the rest of this team is still really good. So say this is the disaster scenario. Say, Scherzer doesn't come back until the All-Star break or late July, and Mahle doesn't look anything like the Rangers expected in year 1, and deGrom doesn't come back at all this season, and then Josh Young takes steps back, and Jonah Heim takes steps back, and maybe this is just Nathaniel Lowe. I still see that team winning around 82 games. This team is just too darn talented, and there's so much stuff that went wrong for them last year that I don't think is going to be repeatable. Of having all of those injuries to all-stars down the stretch basically at the same time. their horrific luck in one-run games of 14-22 and being absolutely disastrous in extra innings of 2-8. I don't see that repeating. This bullpen cannot be as terrible as last year. It just can't. It was so unlikely of a scenario for the Rangers bullpen, of just everybody in the bullpen to just get a collective, unable to pitch itis at the same time for basically the entire season. Like, these guys are too talented back there, and there's too many options now at this point. There's a lot more options in this pen this year than there were last year, and guys who are dependable. And the thing that really flummoxes me about Fangraphs' projections, not that this is the entire episode is just Bryce whines about projection systems yet again, for what's probably like the 5th episode in the last 3-4 weeks, is that this Fangraphs projection is expecting the Rangers starting staff, the guys who there are big questions about staying healthy, and Eovaldi and Gray and Dunning. Well, there's not questions about Dunning staying healthy, but Gray and Eovaldi, there are definitely some skepticism about both of those guys staying healthy. But it's projecting that Nathan Eovaldi is going to throw 170 innings for the Rangers, 29 starts. John Gray, 29 starts, 160 innings. Dane Dunning, 29 starts, 167 innings. And Andrew Heaney, 26 starts, 140 innings. And somehow that team's going to win 82 games? I don't see how that's possible. It's like, oh, well, these guys are all going to be healthy, but what if they were just terrible and a different kind of pitcher than they've been in their whole careers? What if they just, everybody in the bullpen had an ERA over 4? What if that just happened? Outside of Josh Boers, who had 389. I don't understand what these systems are projecting for, and if Scherzer's going to come in and pitch 111 innings and be pretty darn good, what are they expecting Max Scherzer to just suddenly become a pitcher who's just bad? Or Mally's not going to exist? I mean, yeah, the Rangers have some not great options if they have injuries to their starting rotation in the first half before they get those reinforcements. Jose Urena is probably your number 6 starter at this point. That's not good. It's not horrible, though. It's not disaster scenario. You have 2 injuries to your starting rotation. Then your number 7 option, that's where things start to get dicey. But again, the Rangers are already operating with 3 very hurt pitchers at the start of this season. And what are they going to have 5 starting pitchers on the IL for big chunks of this season? They're going to have to rely a lot on Jack Leiter coming up before he's ready, or Owen White coming up before he's ready, or Zach Kent, or whoever else they've got there. Maybe Danny Duffy providing some random spot starts. I don't see the scenario where all these things that they are expecting to go wrong. There's plenty of things that still can go wrong, but the things that they are expecting to be bad are things that I feel fairly confident the Rangers being at least okay at. I mean, these projection systems will make excuses for all kinds of other teams that have, won in the past and, been generally pretty smart. But, I mean, there's questions about every team in Major League Baseball. Outside of the Braves, really. There's not a whole lot of questions there. But even the Dodgers. I mean, their starting staff is a guy who looks amazing, probably going to be really good in Yamamoto, probably going to be their best starter, but hasn't pitched in the majors. Glass now was their opening day starter, and he has been made of fiberglass now for most of his career. And I think 120 innings is his career high. And then they're kind of hoping on Kershaw to be back and effective at some point this season. They've got a whole bunch of other really big question marks in the rotation that maybe they're fine, maybe they're not, and their infield defense is very questionable. So, I mean, the Rangers' questions at this point, it's like, okay, well, maybe the number 3 through 5 starters aren't going to be super great until the Rangers get their actual fully healthy rotation, hopefully at some point in August. Okay, maybe the bullpen is not going to be elite. That's fine. Even a mediocre bullpen with this Rangers squad last year takes it from a 90-win team to a 96 or maybe even a 100-win team, depending on the bullpen, because bullpens are finicky, because there is not really a whole lot of reliability in projecting for how good relievers are going to be. But projecting for all of them to just be bad, and all the starting pitching to be bad, and actually everything we saw with that offense being absolutely sensational all year long and throughout the playoffs, actually I don't trust any of that. It just feels like malpractice of these different projection systems, not just FanGraphs specifically, but a lot of other teams, I just don't see a scenario where this team has a losing record. There are plenty of other very good American League teams that could make it to where the Rangers miss the playoffs and miss it by 2-3 games. The AL West is going to be very darn good. The Mariners are a very good club with exceptional pitching and I think a competent offense this year, which is all they've really needed. The Astros are juggernauts and have been for a long time, but they definitely still have their faults. They have their flaws. They are not as invincible as everyone thought they were, even as recently as the beginning of 2023. The AL East has got a lot of good teams with a lot of question marks as well. I mean, the Yankees are projected by a lot of different projection systems to win the AL East, which I don't think that's even a likelihood, or it's a possibility, but definitely not a likelihood with the question marks they have in their starting rotation, especially with Garrett Cole missing a couple months now. And, who knows about those Orioles? They're still very young. The Rays are probably going to win about 86 to 90 games like they always do. And, I mean, the rest of that division is who freaking knows at this point. But I know the Rangers' flaws. I know the team they assembled last year and all the things that they overcame and the confidence they are riding in as the World Series champs who are saying, yeah, all these disaster scenarios, all these awful things that, oh, no, there's no way they could survive this. There's no way they could survive that. There's all kinds of things this team can survive. There are plenty of things that this team can live through, the slings and arrows that might sink any other team, but they've got freaking Bruce Bochy at the helm. They're riding the confidence of suffering all kinds of different things that would tear down many a team, especially a team that is not this one that literally just did it last year. And going back to back is incredibly difficult. The playoffs are a crapshoot unless you have Bruce Bochy in a winner-take-all game. Then he's going to win. But other than that, nobody really knows exactly what's going to happen in the playoffs. Whether you've got a 116-win Dodgers team or an 82-win Diamondbacks team, it is an absolute crapshoot. But what is not a crapshoot is that this offense is going to be good. This pitching staff will be confident, and this team is built to withstand whatever befalls them in even the worst case scenario. I just cannot see this team being straight up bad. The ceiling is incredibly high, but the floor might be even higher than we all thought last year. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.